Welcome to the Illicit Feminine Podcast. I am your host, Elizabeth Marth. I am a transformational coach, a shadow worker, and as I say on all my openings, I am a woman who is deeply passionate about liberating this feminine experience we are all living. If you've ever felt too much, if you felt too emotional, too loud, too sexy, too crazy, too ambitious, too successful, too whatever that word is, this is a space for you. This episode is about why I created the Illicit Feminine Podcast, and I do have notes. My raw pieces are going to be authentic. They are real. They are riffs, but I do follow an outline. There's a moment, I believe, in every woman's life that she recognizes she's been hiding a part of herself. And if this doesn't apply to you, as I say, God bless. But if it does, keep on listening because this is going somewhere. And this is the podcast for you. When we're young, we all have experiences, and it's usually within our family of origins or the people who are taking care of us. And there is a part of them that have their own wounds and their own dynamics and conditioning. And they have expectations. And all of this in our society is very normalized, right? It's just carried on through generations, right? Ways we were raised culturally, religiously, socially, financially, all of these different factors affect how we are raised. And when we are growing up, we learn things. There is thoughts that by the time of two, right? Like we have felt so many experiences because we're not quite verbal at that point. And so we're holding those experiences in our bodies as feelings. And then as we start to get older and like by the time of 7, right? Like a lot of our conditioning is formed. A lot of our thinking, like our ways, our beliefs are formed. We continue, of course, throughout adolescence and the rest of, gosh, you can continue forming beliefs your entire life, but really up until like, those teenage years where the foundational thinking is really solidified. And it comes a lot from our outside world, not necessarily internally, because we're taught from a young age not to trust ourselves, not to go within, not to look within. A lot of it is outside, right? You look to your parents for approval. You look to religion for approval. You look to your teachers, your friends, and this is taught to be good, right? You learn that you're good if someone approves of you. I'm calling bullshit on this because I think this is why so many people in our society are so unhappy because we are not taught to look inside, right? And that's a whole other episode, but we're taught to like ignore our internal guidance system, our emotions, right? We're taught that feelings are not they're not our authority, right? And there's truth in that. We aren't our emotions, but our emotions are our navigational guidance system. And we are able to connect with the divine within us, God within us, to form a connection, right? And really like, this is the most important relationship ever. Our relationship with ourselves, our relationship with the divine part of ourselves, and the relationship with God. And at some point, this gets outsourced. A little background history on myself, and I will get more into this in other episodes. But I learned very early that I needed to hide myself in certain situations. I learned or felt, how about say that? I'm going to own my shit. I felt I was bad. I was wrong. I was a product of an affair. My mom was married to a man and my dad was married. He had a wife of like over 20 years and 4 kids who were almost grown. And my parents met and we're going to assume they fell in love. And my mom became pregnant and we were living in LA at the time, my mom and I, and my mom and her husband were living in LA at the time when she got pregnant with me. And there was a lot of controversy, obviously, in this situation. Very like dramatic situation. And again, this will be a subject we get further into at a later time. But we ended up, my mom and I, moving to the Midwest where my dad was in his community, a community I actually still live in. And when I came, there was a lot of dislike towards my mom and I. Now, everything is relative. And there are always two sides to every story. Okay. So this is being told through the lens of my experience. I took on a lot of my mom's shame, a lot of her anger and resentment, and a lot of my own feeling that I was bad because I would hear often that, oh, she's Dave and Ann's child. Like she's the other one. And I learned from a very young age about my coming into this world that, I don't think it was told in the terms that I caused the breakup of a marriage, but I was aware from a very young age that like my presence had caused the disintegration of the marriage. Like my presence caused all this destruction around this family. That was what I felt, right? Those were my beliefs. That was what I was believing. And then, of course, how thoughts and beliefs and law of attraction works, I was seeing those experiences and I would see them time and time again as I grew up. I would run into people living in this town that I still live in, and it would be referred to as, oh, you're Dave's other daughter. Dave was my dad. All of that to say, I learned that I needed to hide a part of myself that wasn't a part of myself, like my family, my upbringing, me, that it wasn't even that I didn't feel proud of it. Like I just knew that there was shame around it and I needed to hide it. Like I didn't have the normal happy family stories that other kids do. At this point, you think that, other people have all these great happy family stories, and a lot of them did. And as I was growing, there was all these different things going on within me because I was confused, right? I mean, I grew up in a very dysfunctional household, as a lot of us do. So in that, my mind was going every which way, not sure of who I was, feeling on very unstable ground. Unfortunately, my mother suffered with mental illness that went undiagnosed for most of her life. My dad is what I would call a functioning alcoholic. And definitely, while he had so many great qualities, anger was a huge part of our lives on both my parents. I then started taking on like a lot of rage and acting out. I started drinking at 15 and really drank most of the time from 15 to 26. These were not things I was proud of. I did a lot of things that I understand now, like they made me who I am. And I want to say don't have regret around them. I do. My not understanding myself while I had been in therapy from the age of 9, and actually my mom had always really brought about this beautiful intention of spirituality. And in that spirituality, there was this relationship with God as well. I was brought up in a Christian religious household, so that was part of it, which was ironic and confusing all at the same time. But my mom was a feminist, and she was very much about emotional growth. And so there was this side of her that passed on to me. So I was reading, Marianne Williamson and Julia Cameron, like at a young age, even though I didn't understand it. So I did have this knowledge that there was more. I knew that I wanted to be healthy. I knew that I wanted to be better. Like I always felt there was something wrong with me. I always felt if only I could be better, if only I could make myself better, if only I could fix myself. And really at 26, it was after I got married, I started really doing my journey of transformation. Now it was definitely different than what it looks like now. But I began to learn about myself. I never felt like a self that was separate from my mom. We had a lot of enmeshment things, which then again, I hid myself because my mere existence was really to make her happy, was what I felt. All of this to say, when we come to the point in our life that we no longer want to hide and we want to actually dig deeper into those places in our soul that once felt wild, that once felt free, that once felt true and authentic. That was my experience. My mom died of ALS in 2020, and it changed my world. It rocked everything that I knew. I had set up my life primarily around this woman who I loved very much, but we had a very complicated relationship. It affected my marriage. It affected my kids. It affected me. I had never really stepped into the life that I really wanted to create. I really was creating a life that I thought would make her happy and that like she had always wanted for me. And while there were parts of my life and I wouldn't change any of them, and I am so grateful for my husband and my marriage and my kids and the different stages of where my life has gone, there was a complete individuation that had to happen with me as an individual of where I was like, who am I? Who is this person? And then I started remembering. I started remembering this carefree part of me that didn't show herself a whole lot. And she was sassy and she was kind of bitchy and she was definitely a little dark, right? And this part just continued to emerge. And I became part of different women's groups that grew me and that gave me different experiences. And I was able to learn, oh my gosh, about shadow work. This was like shadow work changed my life, right? And then I began to like train in conscious uncoupling. And then I began to train in calling in the one. And then I began to train in energetics. And then I began like to look into pleasure work and sensuality work. And now I'm getting deeper into sexuality work. And it's just getting to be where this woman is emerging at 46 years old. And I'm so grateful. But along the way, I'm coming across women who had hiding experiences, parts of their lives that they felt so shameful of that they didn't talk about, that were hidden, whether it's about religion, sexuality, abuse, addiction, affair, you name it. There's all these things that are happening that aren't getting talked about. And there's all of these things that are being felt by women who are either repressing them or avoiding or drinking or having some sort of addictive problems or numbing out to life, right? Like they're so disconnected from themselves that there's not this sense of purpose. There's not this sense of deep connection with God, with themselves, with anybody. It's just like they're living on autopilot. And this is the space where I want to have these conversations, where I want to liberate women from shame, where I want to talk about the things that people might be talking about, but I don't think they're talking about it enough, right? I want to dive into controversial topics that piss people off and that people, look at and say, how could they be talking about this? Because those are the things that we're shutting down, like we're ignoring. And yes, I want to do it in a complete and utter, like encircled encapsulation of love. Because the truth is, love is at the heart of everything. And I don't mean this as like, love is at the heart of everything. I literally mean like God, the divine, the universe, like love is the major energy. And when we can like shift and look at our shadows, like the parts of us that we were hiding, and we shine love in there, not light, love. Okay. I'm not trying to lighten up our shadows. I'm actually trying to get us women to go into the deeper parts of ourselves, like the darker parts, the roots, like the soil, right? That like we ignore because we want to see all the pretty like flowers. And I'm all for pretty. That's not it. But let's go inside. Let's do the inner child work. Let's do the rage work. Let's do the grief work. Let's talk about the sexual repression. Let's talk about the shame. And let's like look at it from a lens of love so we can then start having these conversations. So the light is actually real, actually authentic. That's my why for creating the Illicit Feminine. So I would love you to keep on listening. We are going to have, my hope, every conversation under the sun. And yes, it is likely to be triggering and it is likely to be emotional and it is always going to be real. The Illicit Feminine is about nothing sacred being silenced and nothing is off the table. So come as you are, in your light, in your shadow, in your Illicit Feminine.